My name is Tiffany Spraggins-Payne. I'm your host of Zigzag, which highlights women entrepreneurs and industry leaders of the science, technology, transportation, engineering, and mathematics industries. We talk to these women about their business models and how they differ from their competitors. Today, my guest is Quanisha Green. She is an international leadership development strategist and the founder of Black Women CEO, a global hub that delivers high-impact and culturally relevant business training. Green has been a past contributor and consultant for the Power Network Conference, the University of Pennsylvania, and the U.S. Department of State. Her past work has been featured on the National Public Radio, NPR, the Philadelphia Inquirer, and more. Welcome, Quanisha.
Thank you for having me, Tiffany. I'm so excited to be here on Zigzag and the Group Live. Ready to have some fun?
Ready to have some fun. We're so excited to have you here too, Quanisha. And before we jump right into our interview, I would love for you to talk about who I know you to be, which is authentic. What is your definition of authenticity?
My definition of authenticity is really standing in your truth and being unapologetic about it all the time. You know, I'm from the South Bronx, so you can hear the way that B came out. That BR is Bronx.
Got it.
And I actually take a twist on this as a Black woman. I say I'm Black everywhere I go. So who I feel Quanisha is, no matter what the environment is, I just show up in my truth, and I also share my truth. And sometimes that can make other people uncomfortable. When I'm with family, it might be the things that family's like, "Ooh, we don't talk about that stuff." But I believe that by leading by that example, one, we help other people to shine and help them to stand in their truth too. So that's something I take on as a personal way of living, but also a personal philosophy that influences, my business.
Awesome. So, Quanisha, I want you to talk a little bit about the soft sciences versus the hard sciences, which is essentially the makeup or the foundation of your business, Black Women CEO.
Yeah. So typically, even when we think about STEM, right, which your show is dedicated to, and when we say science, and even out in the world, when they say STEM, sciences, they think of, physics and engineering and chemistry and biology, which are referred to as the hard sciences. But social sciences are just as important, just as theorized and, different proven modalities to work. So psychology, sociology, and my background's in social work, right? Of how do we actually use proven methods and, make them into a practice, right?
Yes.
We implement them and do testing and evaluation and see how things show up. So in my business, I combine my research and particularly mental health as it influences Black women, our sense of self, how we show up in work and leadership to help them to start businesses and to generate consistent revenue as well as elevate their value. So we can still take and listen to theories and practices and modalities that have worked in the social sciences and translate them to other spaces.
Thank you. And for our listeners who are tuning in, could you please explain to them what a modality is?
So, how to say this? A modality. You could say it's an approach.
Okay.
That's maybe the best way.
Sure.
An approach that is proven. So, for example, psychotherapy, like when you go to a therapist, there's different modalities they may use. So cognitive behavioral therapy is approach. Many people know Freud and his psychoanalytical theories, right? So it's a way of how you're approaching, you can say, a problem in order to get it solved or to help that person reach their resolution. So a lot of times when we think about sociology or psychology, we just think, oh, everyone's doing the same thing. And that's not true. There are people who specialize in different modalities and approaches to get, to heal people or to study society and all these different things.
And, it's interesting that you talk about approaches and individuals who study society. You were also formally trained in psychology in college. But before we jump into that, your educational background, I would love for you to tell our audience about the natural observer you've always been, right? Mm-hmm. At the age of 8, you heard your internal voice telling you that you needed to become a doctor. And you began to seek out your own path to figure out how to get there. So talk to our audience about the natural observer that you are and how you've been able to master your natural instincts to catapult your business.
Sure, I'm happy to share that. And this is when I'm doing these as keynotes, I usually tell people, let's take a deep breath because some of this may be a little heavy. But essentially, I grew up in the South Bronx in one of the worst projects in the city, but definitely the borough, even though it was a very culturally rich environment. And I was the fifth child of 4 children, but I was the only one who lived with my mother. My brothers were raised by my grandmother, and I was until 5, and then my mother came to get me. And my mother had a substance abuse problem that had spanned, like, she was on drugs like 15 years even before I was born, and then most of my life. So here I was, 8-year-old, the only one living with my mother, right, since maybe first grade, so 2 years, and having to be subject to many of the things that she went through. So seeing her struggle with this addiction.
Yes.
And it was second grade. I was looking at the window, and we had to keep a journal. And I wrote in my journal that I wanted to jump out the window and take the dog with me. Mm. And if you were a teacher, right, and you read that, you'd probably be like, "Ooh, we got to bring the teacher, the mom in, and everything like that." So a parent-teacher meeting was called, but my mother didn't go, and that was something that she didn't do often. And my brother, who was the middle child, my brother Eddie, went. And I don't remember exactly what happened in that conference, but I remember coming home, and Eddie said, "Quanisha, I would be very sad if you killed yourself." Mm. And my brother, although we were 10 years apart, he was my soul twin. He was almost like my dad, essentially, like really took on that role as a father figure. So I remember him saying that to me, and I went back to my room. And here I am back in that space that I talked about, looking at the window with the dog right next to me. And I decided in that moment that I did not want my mother's life. Hmm. And as soon as I kind of made that declaration, I heard a voice. And I always tell people this had to be God, because I think we know what our inner voice sounds like.
Absolutely.
And there was another one that said, "Go to Harvard and become a doctor." Hmm. And then I said, "How?" Right? All this dialogue in my head.
Yes.
How? And it said, "Keep doing well in school."
Yes.
So at that point, you might be like, well, how well was a second grader doing? I was testing in the top 99 percentile on statewide standardized tests, and I just continued on that path. And it was a means of survival for me.
Yes.
Right? Getting there. And so when you talk about that natural observer, I started to know that my life wasn't like other people's lives, particularly girls, right? When you think about girls and their mothers' interactions. And this became more present as I grew up, when I would see how other mothers interacted with their daughters. And I was like, wait, my mom doesn't kiss me when she greets me, or my mom's not picking me up from school. And so I was very keen on my surroundings and just noticing behavior. So, and usually it was in comparison to what I wasn't getting, and was thinking like, oh, is that the right way to do this? So that's a lot where the natural observation skills started. And then I got to hone that through my educational opportunities, primarily in college as a sociology major.
That's great. I want you to talk about how you pivoted from pursuing Harvard to actually becoming a student at University of Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm. So I went to visit Harvard. It's like, So one of the things that got me through to have these opportunities was telling people that I couldn't go to the junior high school down the block because it wouldn't get me to Harvard, right? Well, at the time I said it wouldn't help me become a doctor.
Yes.
And so people started to take me under their wing and help me to apply to spaces and be in spaces that was there to mentor and develop highly talented Black and Latino and usually first-generation students. So I was in preparatory programs. I ended up going to a specialized junior high school, which was a feeder school for boarding schools and New York private day schools. Then at boarding school, I was in another program that helped you to flourish there and look at different colleges. So and they took us on a college tour, right? So still in this mind, going to be a doctor, going to Harvard, and then I went to visit Harvard. And when you go as a student of color, they usually have programs dedicated to students of color, and they bring in current students of color who talk about their experiences. And everyone kept saying Harvard, Harvard. And I was like, oh my God, I can't go here. That's how they say Harvard. So as I do say I was a poor Black girl. My high school was affluent, like both the Bushes went to Andover. So then I had culture shock being in a primarily white, affluent environment. And although I flourished and was a student leader and all these, I rowed, I was varsity crew rower, I didn't want to be in another environment that felt out of touch with me. Mm. And so when I went to visit Penn, still probably had African Americans and other people of color from affluent backgrounds, they felt more down to earth and grounded. And so maybe some of the air of Harvard that maybe people kind of get wrapped into that stereotype or feeling like they have to present that way. But they would say Penn is the fun Ivy
Yes.
So that community was just more relaxed and natural, and I related to them. And I was like, this is where I'm going. So while I wasn't Harvard, I always say I got to my Ivy League.
Yes.
And that's how I made that transition.
So talk to us about, you decided to major in sociology while at University of Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to us about that journey and, how that University of Penn, when we think of University of Penn, we always think of a rigorous curriculum
Mm-hmm.
and pretty affluent environment. Talk to us about that experience transitioning from the Bronx to Philadelphia,
Mm-hmm.
studying sociology at University of Penn.
Yeah, so the transition from high school to college, at least academically, was very seamless. Like I often tell people, I'm like, I had harder work in high school at Phillips Academy, Andover, because they're all about you all are going to be the leaders of tomorrow.
Yes.
But one thing that was, I think, drilled into me in my preparatory programs, but that also I was a lover of just learning, was that even though I know I wanted to become a doctor, I wanted to be a well-rounded student. And then Penn, at the time, I was in the College of Arts and Sciences. You have different requirements to take a social science, and now we have the cultural diversity, a math. Like, you have all these different things that you can maybe test out of.
Yes.
So while I was in my intro to sociology class, I literally fell in love. For the first time, there was, you can say, academic information that was explaining my life. I was like, wait a minute, I see myself in what we're reading. Oh, wait, it explains my life experiences.
Yes.
And I just kept going and like by my junior year, I had like one class left in my major because I was just hungry for it.
Wow.
And I actually moved away from being pre-med and going to medical school because I realized that a lot of my friends that wanted to become doctors, they felt like they had this calling to be a doctor. And I was like, I like dissecting people. That's why I wanted to go be a surgeon. I know it's a little weird, but I love biology and dissecting. So I was like, oh, surgeon. And once again, this calling that I heard at 8. And then I thought, well, what am I passionate about? And it was sociology, working in communities that reflected, I guess, my identities. And I really believe that people should be able to fulfill their potential no matter where they were born. So it was almost like this very spiritual experience, but how all these different things came together for me. And sociology really seemed like the vehicle for my passion and my skills at the time.
I think what really excites me the most is that you're a tribrid thinker. Recently I've been thinking of myself as a hybrid thinker, but since sitting with you and learning of your story, I found out that it's very possible for people to think in different mediums. And so Black Women CEO, you created this amazing business for yourself. It's a multi-level platform where you take intuitive leadership, which is individual coaching and profit planning. That's what you do. You also create introspective frameworks, right? So helping people to really deal with their mindset and then you also help to create clarity around people's brand. I want you to talk to us about how you went about starting Black Women CEO and how it ties back to your beginnings, as a little girl going through this, venturing through this educational system and dealing with the things that you had to deal with at home, but then also talking about how you've been able to marry those experiences of your upbringing with your educational experience to start this phenomenal tribrid of a platform called Black Women CEO.
Yeah, happy to share how all these pieces came together. I think one benefit of growing up where I did in the Bronx, when I said it was culturally rich, is that this sounds funny, but the white people that we would see in our neighborhood were usually the members of the Latter-day Saints. Like the teachers were Black or Hispanic, the store owners were Black or Hispanic, right? The community members are Black and Hispanic. And I often would tell people, I didn't even know that Spanish people were Spanish. Like, we were all just one. And so then to be in environments where I was called the minority descent felt weird. Andover would often have these diversity dialogues, which I think is great because many schools don't start having those conversations when you're 13, 14, 15, 16, 18 at the most when you're a senior. But it was hard to hear some of my friends say, like, all Black people are poor or they can never be here. And I'm like, hello, did you not see me? Actually, we rode together. So I don't understand. So coming from a culturally rich environment that was very empowering, that really helped us to say, like, not just like you're Black and you're beautiful, but that you're smart and you're whole and, you're fine.
Yes.
I guess they knew they were countering what we would face in society. And then to be thrown into an environment that was telling you, it wasn't the school level, but I think the other social systems that other students came from, when you hear these dialogues that you're less than. And so while at Andover, I advocated. I was actually, by my senior year, the president of the Afro-Latino American Society, advocating for, cultural competency in some senses and inclusion and all these different things. So that was sort of my orientation. I always say, they started to call me the loud Black girl, of advocating for, Black folks. And then in college, I did the same thing. I became the political chair of Emoja, which was an organization of Black organizations at Penn, and working in partnership with other affinity groups and sitting with public safety, because they were constantly stopping the Black and Latino men, even at students, asking them, like, do you belong here? So that has been my legacy. And then as I moved into the workplace, doing organizational leadership, being a co-executive director, I had Black women, some within my organization, even outside, constantly saying, how did you get there? Right? I feel like I'm being overlooked. I feel like I'm not being considered.
Yes.
And it was really hard for me to hear that, particularly when it was happening in my organization, because I'm like, wait, I'm the young Black girl. I was like 28 who just got promoted to co-executive director.
Yes.
And we were a social justice organization for low income and Black and brown people. I'm like, how do I bring this up?
Yes.
And it was so much chaos when I did. I was accused of racially instigating things. I'm like, wait a minute, they came to me. I didn't say anything. But what I started to think about was, because at the time I had funders telling me, oh, we gave this money because of you and all these other things. I was like, what happened if I do this on my own around something that I love? And so I decided to use at the time I was in a master's program in social work. And I started to say, how can I use my education to study these things? So I started to study African-American managers and community organizations. And then this prayer that came to me one day, I was in prayer and God said, focus on the Black ladies. And I was like, okay. And so it switched to me studying Black women leadership and our challenges and experiences. And from all that, the studies and also using my life, it's called an autoethnography, where you study yourself to also see the larger, how it connects to the larger social theories. I started to see that while there is bias and there's unconscious bias that keeps Black women from moving up, because often people want to mentor people who look like them, even if they're not conscious of it, and we're underrepresented in corporate and political leadership. There's also this sense of self that for many of us, because we're not a monolith, but this is from the research perspective, that many of us have challenges with.
Yes.
And so one of the largest qualitative studies of Black women showed that it was like 300 respondents. And qualitative is not when you're just doing surveys, but when you're actually sitting like we are and having a conversation, and the researchers are looking for themes and actually using people's words to paint a picture of what the research is saying. And about 90% of those respondents, it's in a book called Shifting that shares the research results, but it showed about 90% of the women said that they were aware of negative stereotypes impacting Black women. But then about 97% of them said that they were affected by it. And the way that shows up is that either we're saying, wait, I don't want to be that stereotype seen as the loud Black woman or the vixen and all these other things, or some of us internalize it. But the thing with this shifting is that it impacts how we show up at work. It impacts how we show up our relationships. It impacts even how we see ourselves, right? So all this shifting that we're doing is impacting so many facets of who we are, our self-worth, our self-value. And so we see that show up in the workplace, but also entrepreneurship. So that tribe model, coming back to that, we can't just say, oh, go train and coach and here's some modalities, and then people don't show up to implement. And you're like, well, why are they not doing this? Especially with entrepreneurship, it's like one of the greatest personal development tools out there.
Absolutely.
You're questioning like, oh, well, people want this from me, or who am I to charge this? And for Black women, we need to understand our cultural, historical, familial, and even our own individual lived experiences and how that influences how we show up in entrepreneurship, but as well as in the workplace. And so that's why I'm able to, with my background in social work, being trained in cognitive behavioral perspectives, also being trained in leadership development, being trained in entrepreneurship and business development, to kind of meet in the middle where all these things intersect, and also use different teaching modalities to touch women so that they can do the internal work first, because research shows that Black women also often don't do that self-introspective work because there's all these thoughts around that. and
Yes.
dig out what's going on so that we can help, well, at least my clients, I can help them start to grow into a healthier sense of self that then helps them to, one, do the work of getting their business together, but also saying, hey, I should also be paid top dollar for the work I'm looking to do. So I don't know if that was too long-winded, but that's how all these pieces come together. So my whole orientation is always, how do we take theory and turn it into practice?
Yes.
And I think I've just been fortunate. One, I'm a Black woman who has experienced these things. So I also think I can come at a peer level. Like, I don't tell people I'm not a guru. I'm your sister in this, right?
Yes.
And so that helps them to relate to me, but I also understand our experience. And then I also understand it from an academic scholar perspective.
One of the things I love in all of the work that you do, you pride yourself on helping women to not only aspire to leadership, but to get paid, right? You really believe that women, particularly women of color who are making significantly less than their male counterparts on the dollar, you want to help them to avoid some of their profit blockers. Mm-hmm. And so in the work that you do with cognitive and behavioral studies, could you tell our audience how you begin to work with women, particularly women of color, around the imposter syndrome, how they show up in meetings, but then also how do they show up when they're, declaring their value, when they're providing services to their clients?
So some of the profit blockers, just to give this, and this is something that women in general struggle with. Of course, humans, but the research shows, particularly women in general, we struggle with feeling like we don't belong or that we're a fraud. And then we also have confidence issues that stop us from negotiating. And, some people say increasing the ask, right? And saying like, no, I actually should be, be paid $100,000. And we're like, oh, 30 is fine.
Yes.
and it's how it's socialized. And Black women, so we have that intersection of being Black and a woman, and it creates its own unique experience where we too question if it's okay. Because think about, society is constantly telling us, we're less than, we're not as pretty. For people who may not be familiar with African-American experiences, we're also told you have to work twice as hard to get what the next person has. And let's just be honest, that next person is usually a white male, right? So it's like you have to work twice as hard. And when you tell someone you have to work twice as hard, what are you telling them? You're not good enough, right? Or we don't value enough that you have to just do doubly or double what everyone else is doing just to maybe get by. And so we internalize a lot of this, and we're like that shifting. I said, we're constantly measuring ourselves against these things. So when I work with women, there's doubt that comes up. And these are women who have excelled and have accolades academically, professionally. But when it comes to their entrepreneurship, that's when the doubt comes up. That's when the fear comes up. Sometimes it's fear of success. Sometimes it's fear of failure. That's where comparison comes up a lot. And then the sense of self, the self-worth of like, who am I? Or nobody cares what I have to say. Who am I to do this? Am I worth that much? Would people pay me that much? Will they hire me? And helping them switch to these orientations that they're willing to promote themselves, that they're willing to see not just their value as a human being.
Yes.
Right? Their value, just also the value that they bring to anything, helping them to see their expertise, even starting to quantify that, but then also starting to see their value in the marketplace that's devoid of even their self-value. You have that inner value, and then you also have the value of what your work and your services might be in the marketplace.
I think that's awesome. Could you talk to us about how you've been able to create this multi-level platform, this tribrid of sorts? Mm-hmm. You leverage technology, social media in particular, to connect with your clients. You have virtual meetings, group meetings, you have individual virtual meetings. Mm-hmm. Can you talk to us about your business model and these multiple platforms that you use to connect with your clients?
Yes. So my question, this is also where I kind of have this orientation as a community organizer. I'm like, where are the people and where are they going to get that problem solved?
Yes.
Right. So when I was doing foreclosure prevention, I was like, where are they and where are they going? They're like, oh, they're going to legal aid. And so I went to legal aid and was like, where are those people you can't help? Bring them over here to us for foreclosure fighting, right? Same thing with Black women. When you look at Nielsen reports, they talk about how African Americans in general tend to be heavy mobile users, right? So we're maybe, we talk about the digital divide. Maybe they're not on laptops and desktops at home, but we are on our phones.
Yes.
Right? We are on social media. And so when I thought about this mentorship gap that exists just in corporate and political leadership, and people talk about how crucial mentorship is for career elevation, I thought, well, how could we use the internet, the digital space, to foster these connections? Because often there's not someone who maybe looks like me at the top, but she may be on Facebook, okay. Right? And so using the digital space to form communities where Black women can connect, and also as a means where I can share information and resources, make invitations to workshops. And then in delivering the service, yes, I also use the internet. So video conferencing, Facebook groups, email, right, to stay connected, and also touch on the different ways people learn. Yes. Right? So some people are visual, some people are audio, some people are tactile, yes, right? So you can also touch on these different ways that people process information, so that basically there's all these different options so that people grasp what they need. And so the tribe that we've been talking about is, I do private one-to-one coaching. We have an online classroom. So that's stuff that I kept repeating over and over again in private sessions. I was like, how about I record a webinar or a keynote, a PowerPoint presentation, all this? So there's an online platform. And then we have the group coaching also via video conference with a Facebook group too, where I do like weekly Q&As. And this is my high level kind of group program. And then I'll do components of these for like different intensives. And I also have done live events like in Philadelphia. Hopefully to take that on the road, and it's a meetup group. So sometimes it's even using technology to inform people to meet in live spaces too. So I guess this is the millennial in me that is like, how can we really use this as a tool, yes, right, and not as a distraction?
I think that's awesome. You've done some work with some celebrities as well. Mm-hmm. Rosita Thurman.
Yes, Rosita Thurman of Happy Black Women.
And you've also worked with Kim Coles.
Yes, Kim Coles, the actress. Many people know from Living Single.
Yes. So talk to us about how you got connected with these women and how the work that you do on the research and development side, as well as behavioral health, amongst other things in this tri-Brit, how you've been able to support the great work that these women are doing, and how have they been able to pour back into you?
Yeah, I'm happy to share that. One thing I mentioned in my academic background is that mentorship is so important. So when I had that question of how can I do this on my own, I was like, okay, what's the course I need to take to become an entrepreneur? And Rosita Thurman at the time had a course called Launch Yourself, because she had moved from nonprofit leadership, that's where I was, into full-time entrepreneurship. And she's just like a year older than me. And I was like, wait a minute, how's she doing this? Oh, there's a course, I'm gonna sign up. Yes. And so, and I stayed in her community like from 2010 on, and literally I was at my field placement for social work, my graduate program. It was a Friday afternoon. Someone was calling me with a Virginia phone number. And I'm like, who is this? And it was Rosetta. And I was like, hey. So I thought maybe like she had a program. She was like, I wanted you to look at it. She was like, no, I'm creating this program manager position. And you were the first person that came to mind. Wow. She was like, not only have you done well in my programs, you are everywhere. Wow. Everywhere. So this is one of my fine clients now tips. Shine, right? Yes. Show up. Be out there sharing it, because then who do they think of when you shine? They think of you. Yes. And so we got together. I became the program manager, moved up to program director, and then I was the first business coach in her organization, because it was only her. And then she was like, I want you to come because everybody loves to talk to you. So I became the business coach. And so during the time I was working with Rosetta, she moved her business to $1 million status. So really, I want to say instrumental, but part of the team. Yes. Well, there's only like 3 of us. So yeah, I guess it's instrumental, but part of the team that helped the business to get there. And so I learned so much and made so many connections. So with Black Women CEO, I got to pilot that work with and also joined the high level mastermind too. Wow. So I was like still a student and working and then coaching people at the same time.
That tri-Brit again.
Yeah, tri-Brit. And my mastermind sisters, because they were having a hard time implementing, so we were all learning the same information. And here I am being like the little rocket going. They're like, wait a minute, why are you moving and not us? Yes. And so I was able to work in them with the coaching, the inner work, right, the cognitive behavioral stuff, to figure out what was holding them back so that then they could too implement. But mostly it was having that confidence, courage, and clarity. Mm-hmm. So Happy Black Woman has been so pivotal to not only my growth, but even the growth of my business. Yes. And was that encouraged? Actually, she was the one that named the Black Woman CEO, my program. And I was like, that's going to be the business name. Wow. And then also bringing me on to help me test a lot of the foundation of what I do within the Happy Black Woman community. And I was a speaker at we're in 2018? The 2017 launch of business. And Kim Coles was a speaker that year. So we had, communicated via email, of course, plenty of times before in my role as a program director, but we met in person. And after the event we just got together. She was like, Quanisha, you resonate. Like, she was like, I was just looking at you and like, wow, like you're confident. So once again, y'all shine, right?
Yes.
And I won't go into all her business, but she was struggling with some things around the self-worth, the elevating your value. And you wouldn't think, oh my God, you're a celebrity, you're famous,
yes,
right? But she was also starting on her entrepreneurship journey, teaching people how to use their story in service of the business and having some things come up around her value and people even seeing her and respecting her in that light. And so I got to do private coaching with her.
yes.
And then we also got to collaborate. And so I've taught in her community. So it's been a really great relationship, but moving up and working with Happy Black Women in the back office as a student has really helped me to shape my business. So like I said, piloting, doing the market research, having that mentorship from someone who has like taken her business and like, whoo, like Rosetta has done great things.
Yes.
And now I'm like on her tail, like, I'm coming to get you, Rosetta.
But she's still a great mentor.
Right, it's collaboration. And I don't see people as competition. So it's like a friendly, like, oh, okay, you got 1 million people? I'm going to get 1 million people one day. It's encouragement.
It's called co-opetition, guys.
Co-opetition. So yeah, so that's been really great and it's ever growing. So it's almost this domino effect from, once again, people introducing you to others or collaborating to come into their community and teach, and you get clients there. So I've just been really fortunate to, one, have invested in myself at high levels, to have access.
Yes.
People also then see the work that I do and like, wow, you're an implementer, you're getting these results, and I share. And so that, like I said, that really helps you to stand out. And then it just also positions you for more opportunities.
From a user design perspective, having worked with Happy Black Woman, having started Black Women CEO, you know, a lot of the work that you have to do on the back office end is crucial to your success, right? And so you create a lot of, you craft a lot of evaluations, pre and post evaluations. You also set up a lot of qualitative measures or assessments as well. Talk to us about where you begin to do the work there. You know, why is that information so important when you're doing the type of work that you're doing, which is transformational to these women in their lives?
In many different spaces, you hear that user feedback is important, right? So tech, you have a trial and then they're like, fill out the survey, and they'll release beta 2.0 version, whatever it is. And a lot of times, I'll just say people, because it's happened with women and men. I think sometimes, especially if you have a type A personality, you think you can't release something until it's perfect.
Yes.
And I'm always like, pilot your work. And I realize now, I'm like, I was in lots of pilots as a student. So maybe that's helped influence that orientation that, you know, you don't have to tie yourself down. It doesn't have to be this forever. Or if it doesn't work, at least you have real world information to review. So usually prior to starting something, having one-to-one conversations, focus groups, sometimes it even comes out in like electronic surveys like SurveyMonkey, Google Forms, when I'm asking people questions like, what is your number one challenge? What are your desires? What are your frustrations? Like, what are you trying to achieve? What have you tried before?
Yes.
So that's a lot of the front end. On the back end, it might be like, well, how did you feel even before working with me, right? How do you feel now? What do you feel were the strengths of the program, the weaknesses? What did you feel like might have been missing, right? Yes. How could I have shown up better? So this way you can look at all that different information and shaping how you deliver your services, the curriculum. So maybe there's something you could expand on. And then, you know, it better fits the next folks that come in so they have a delightful experience. And then you also may see areas of opportunity then. Because if someone says like, oh, I would love more sales training, and maybe you feel like, okay, the sales training that's in that course is appropriate for that level of student. But hey, maybe there's an add-on or a new course for those who now have mastered, say, 101, and now they can have 201. So you also can see opportunities where you can increase your profits by having more services. But some of this is part of my social work background. We're always taught to do pre and post evaluations. And so I always tell people, take the leap and then evaluate where you land compared to where you want to be, and just keep going, keep testing and piloting and getting out there. Stephen Pressfield, in the book, The War of Art, he talks about how a professional does their work in the real world and gets real world feedback. So I also take that on, too, when I think about how am I being a professional in my business endeavor? How am I being a CEO? And I look at his 10 things that he has. Yes. And so that's another orientation to making sure that I show up, I do the real work, and then I get information about it so I can know how to make it better.
So, Quanisha, could you tell our audience about some of the influences or mentors that has helped you in life? Besides Rosetta Thurman, besides Kim Cole, Why don't you talk to us about who some of your early stage mentors were that kind of, kept you going along the process of your growth and development?
Yeah, this is such an apt question because recently, I guess it was Mother's Day, and I was thinking about particularly 3 women, 2 were relative that were really influential. My grandmother. When I was 5 years old, she told me, "You're Black and you're a woman, but never let that get in your way." And I understood it at 5, right? So,
wow.
And my cousins and my brothers would always laugh because my grandmother will ask for my opinion and let me share it. Then just shut me down, she didn't shut me down like wait, she asked you your opinion. And she'll say, well, thank you for letting me know. We're not going to do that. But I still need to go wash the dishes, right? And so she encouraged that. So I think about that early mentorship in my family.
Yes.
And then my aunt, one of my mother's younger sisters, my Aunt Deborah was an entrepreneur. And so very hard on me, but I know it was out of love.
Yes.
Where she would, one time she took me to a networking event when I was like 18. She was like, I want you to work this room and get a card from everyone else. So I feel like a lot of my business savvy that I learned just watching her and being mentored by her came out of that, knowing that, you could do it on your own. Yes. You don't have to follow the traditional path. And then I've also been, and I think I shared earlier, lots of preparatory programs. So some of my first mentors were, the first one was my 6th grade teacher. She was the first person I ever shared that dream of going to Harvard and becoming a doctor.
Yes.
Because it was time to apply for junior high schools, and often the feeder school from my school was the one down the block. And I said, I can't go to the one down the block. She was like, well, why not? I said, it's not going to get me to Harvard. And she was like, okay, what? What happened here? And she was like, okay, well, let's see. She got all the other teachers together.
Yes.
And they helped me, know about the specialized junior high schools. And so the last mentor I can think of that was, really crucial to this early development was my principal, Brother Brian. He was the principal of my junior high school. As a 7th grader, I was able to take an 8th grade class at the time called adolescent psychology. And as I mentioned, my family home was sort of volatile with my mother being on drugs. And you had to share your nuclear family. And I was stuck. When it was time to hand in this paper, I was like, I can't do it.
Yes.
And I guess the psychologist in him was like, well, let's go talk about this.
Yes.
And he literally gave me therapy every week for a year. Because then I didn't have to take the class again, but I got to hand in that 7th grade paper for this 8th grade class
yes.
at the end of my 8th grade year to graduate.
Wow.
So it took almost weekly sessions to actually get out all the stuff that I held you just didn't talk about it.
Yes.
And to know that, one, it wasn't normal. And so, but the actual writing has now become such a cathartic process for me. So he was the first one that told me, what's happening in your house isn't normal.
Yes.
And this is how it impacts how you show up in the space. Because I would get angry and we weren't allowed to fight or else you get kicked out.
Yes.
So I understood those stakes. Like I said, my going to Harvard was a survival thing. So I'm like, okay, I can't punch anybody. I'm going to punch the wall next to you. And he was like, this is not healthy. Let's talk about where this anger is coming from.
Yes.
And it was through those sessions that he not only told me, this is what you do, but he helped me to understand why. And so that's how I was able to then write that paper. So those folks were so crucial in those very formative years that influenced a lot of the success that I had later and able to show up in spaces and show up well.
Quanisha, it's interesting because when you and I were preparing for this interview, we had a very rich conversation, and we're still having a very rich conversation, right? One of the things I love about your story, but more importantly, love about the authenticity that you bring to any conversation or space where you show up is that, again, you care about making sure people understand how to be themselves, but also how to put in the work and then capitalize off of who they are and what they do. And so in talking to you, last time we had a really interesting tagline that we stumbled upon just through conversation. And you said to me that you want people to learn how to pilot their work so they can elevate their self-worth. With that being said, I would love for you to talk about what success means to you.
How much longer do we have?
I know we had to sandwich it all together, but I just need
success means to me you designing a life worth living. Right? And that aligns with what you desire, a life where you can really truly show up as yourself, be uncompromising, and know that people love you just for that, right? And that you can be whatever it is, highly compensated, highly loved, whatever it is, just for that. So when I guess my definition of success, I try to encourage others to do it, even though I know it will all look different. So really living life on your terms and having whatever skills and strengths and support that you need to reach your fullest potential. So that's what success means to me, having that very the foundation in place to just do that in whatever way it looks like for you.
Awesome. And could you tell us what might be some aspirational goals that you have for Black Women CEO?
Mm-hmm. I feel like it's that 6th grade moment where I'm like, I have to tell the teacher.
Go ahead, girl. You can tell me.
My vision is to have Black Women CEO to be the premier organization for Black women entrepreneurs. So I want someone to think Black women and like Black-owned businesses, go to Black Women CEO.
Yes.
So I really want it to be the premier, particularly online destination for all things Black women entrepreneurship.
And so for those who have not experienced Black Women CEO, how can they access it?
Well, they can go to blackwomenceo.com. So Black, then women singular, WOMAN CEO.com.
And so for more information about how they can access your Facebook page, is this an open group? Is it a private group? How?
The Black Women CEO Circle?
Yes.
Yeah. So if you type in Facebook, just Black Women CEO, I'm usually the first person that pops up, or you can type in Black Women CEO Circle, and that is our Facebook group. We currently have about 5,000 women in the Facebook group. So if you want to come hang out with us on Facebook and be in community, we'll love to have you.
Awesome. Quanisha, thank you so much for being on the show today. We had a fantastic interview, conversation, sister talk is what we were calling it earlier.
Yes.
So thank you so much for coming on today, and I hope you found this time to be worthwhile and excited.
I loved it. Thank you, Tiffany. I really appreciate this opportunity. And, I think often we don't talk about these different facets of entrepreneurship and the inner work and all that. So I'm glad that we could bring the soft sciences to your
yes.
to your show, and I just had a great time. So thank you, everyone.
Oh, you're welcome. And for those of you who are tuning in, this is not the end of Quanisha's appearance on Zigzag. She will be coming in every now and again to drop some knowledge on the soft sciences. Today, my guest was Quanisha Green. She is an international leadership development strategist and the founder of Black Women CEO, a global hub that delivers high impact and culturally relevant business training. Green has been a past contributor and consultant for the Power Network Conference, the University of Pennsylvania, and the U.S. Department of State. Her past work has been featured on NPR, as well as the Philadelphia Inquirer, and more. For more information about Black Women CEO, you can visit www.blackwomenrise.com. For more information about Zigzag, you can find us on www.theenterprisecenter.com or Apple Podcasts, YouTube. This is Tiffany Spraggins-Payne, and I'm signing off.
Hello everyone, I'm Ryan Martin, the production consultant for The Grit Live. If you enjoyed this episode of Zigzag, please share it with the world. If you have any feedback or would like to be featured on this program, please email us at thegritlive@gmail.com. Thank you for listening.